Good morning, everyone. Hi, Amber. That was quick. As soon as I clicked over, you're already commenting. Good morning. Good to see you, Collins crew. Hope everyone's doing well. Today, we're going to be in the last of our series in Haggai. As we reach the end of Haggai, we're reminded that even though we have a role in our plans, we set the right priorities, we avoid those unhealthy comparisons, we start to focus on the basics. At the end of it all, we have to rely on God. We have to trust God for the results. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Hi, Miss Judy. Hi, Carol. Good morning. Good to see you. Hope everyone is staying warm. And I'll be glad when I can stop saying that. I saw a thing this week that fits my mood. It said, I'll be glad when I can start complaining about how hot it is. So that's what I'm waiting for. Hi, Will. Hi, Bridget. Good morning. Good to see everyone here. Thanks so much for saying hello. Let me know you're here. Hi, Darlene. Good morning. So, I always look forward to the quick hellos here on the start of this. So I do appreciate that. And hi, Alicia. Good morning. Hope y'all are doing well. All right. Well, we're going to jump right into it this morning. We're going to wrap up this study of the book of Haggai. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been helpful to you. I've kind of taken this self-help theme with it because it does have a lot of, I think, underlying messages around, what God was showing the children of Israel at that point in their lives and their existence as a nation, about how God wanted them to interact and make a difference and get things, hopefully in their case, back to normal is what they were warning for. It seems to fit our world today. It has a lot of underlying messages about how we make change in our lives in general. We, setting the right priorities, learning not to have those unhealthy comparisons, letting God be the one to shape who we are and trusting Him for that. And then focusing on the basics, making sure that we're doing what we can do. We can focus on avoiding sin and things of that nature. And then this last piece we're going to look at today is really about God stepping in and saying, look, now I'm going to do something. And if you've been waiting for God to do something, then hopefully this passage today will be encouragement to you and a reminder that He is at work, and He promises to do what He has planned to do. So with that said, I'll just jump right in. It is going to, well, I'm not going to say it's going to be shorter, but it's a pretty short passage today. And so I have a couple of other verses I want us to pull into it I think are related to it. So let's just go ahead and jump to the scripture reading today, and we'll see how it goes from there. But our scripture reading today is Haggai chapter 2, verses 20 to 23. Haggai 2, verse 20 says, And again the word of the Lord came into Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth. And I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms, and I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen. And I will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and their riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his brother. In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, will I take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and will make thee as a signet, for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you would help us this morning to speak to our hearts from your word and challenge us, we ask in your name. Amen. So as I've mentioned, we're in this last stage of Haggai, or these are the last three verses. And it would have been easy to kind of just tack these on to last week's as kind of 3 more verses just to kind of fit into last week's message. But as you notice from that passage, they have their own, it's his own prophecy. God comes again and says, I spoke to Haggai. Now it's the same day. We'll see that when we get to the verse there, but it's a separate word from God. That's why I wanted to kind of pull it out and make it be a final thing here. And I think it gives us a really good picture of wrapping all this together and reminding us that sometimes we have to let the results happen. Many years ago, when right before Christian and I got married, I'd been wanting to lose some weight at that point. It was funny because when I was in high school, I was fairly skinny. I had a football coach that convinced my mom at one point to make me milkshakes for breakfast and different things like that to try to beef me up a little bit. And I remember when I went to college, I was home one weekend from college in Pensacola, and had gone out to eat with my mom, and happened to see this football coach was there. I remember he looked at me and he said he looked at her and he said, "You can stop giving him milkshakes now." So after high school, I put on a little bit of weight, and Chris and I were getting close to getting married. I wanted to lose some of that, so I went to what was then called Physicians Weight Loss, and they had this process where you go in every week and they run all your vitals and do blood work and different things, and then they give you a plan for what to eat. And they had these powder things that you could use as a replacement for a meal, little soups or whatever they were. And I remember going into that. It was kind of all like new to me at that time. I've unfortunately got very good at all these different diets and things since then, but at that point it was still kind of new to me. I remember thinking, okay, I just gotta do what they're telling me to, and kind of trust that it's gonna happen. And it was true. I had to kind of just trust the process, trust that what they were saying was going to work. And at that time, it did. I was fortunate enough to lose some weight then, but just not disciplined enough to maintain that. But there's so many things in life we have to do that. We do certain things, saying, okay, I'm going to follow these steps. I'm going to follow this process. At the end of it, we have to kind of wait and let those results happen. We live in an instant world where we wish everything was just, snap our fingers and boom, there it is. We want to be able to walk to the checkout line. And, oh, there's what I need. Let me just, pick it up and buy it right now. But so many times we have to wait for things to happen. We have to wait and let the results happen. And that's kind of what I want us to look at today as we look at these last three verses of Haggai, is that idea of letting God work. I mentioned that I didn't tack this on to last week's, even though it's a very short, just what's this, 4 verses long. It's a tiny part of the book here, but I think it's important because it says, and again, the word of the Lord came into Haggai. It's a separate prophecy. It's a separate time that God spoke to Haggai and said, "There's one more thing I want you to message. I want you to convey for me." And it came in the 420th day of the month. If you look back, that's the exact same day as what we talked about last week, when he gave them the message about when Haggai challenged the priest and asked him, what happens if something unclean touches something clean, and all of that. Same day, but a different message. And I think it's because God wanted to draw attention to this. He wanted to make sure they noticed this separately. And so that's what I want us to look at today. It says, "Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah." Now, the last prophecy, the other one on the same day, he was speaking to the priests. He was speaking to the religious rulers, or the religious leaders at that time. Excuse me. And here he's talking to what you call the political leader. The one who is he's not the leading them from a spiritual standpoint. He's their governor. He's the one in charge of overseeing their society, if you will. And hi, Angela. Good morning. Good to see you. And so he's speaking to Zerubbabel. He says, "Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying," this is what he has to say, "I will shake the heavens and the earth." And before I go any further, I just love the way he started that off. I just love the fact that we have a God that when he speaks, he says, "You know what? I just want to let you know I can shake heaven and earth." Do you need God to shake heaven and earth for you today? Do you have things that you're looking at saying, "God, I don't know how I can handle this. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know if I'm going to get the results I've been trying for here." We need God to shake heaven and earth. We have a God that can do that. That's what God says to Zerubbabel here. He says, "I will shake heavens and the earth." He goes on to say, "And I will overthrow the thrones of kingdoms. And I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the heathen, and will overthrow the chariots and those that ride in them, and the horses and the riders shall come down, every one by the sword of his brother." Now, it can get kind of tricky looking at all that and thinking, okay, what all does this mean? But you think about it from Zerubbabel's standpoint. Here is Zerubbabel, who was in the line of David. If Israel were still a nation, Zerubbabel wouldn't be called a governor. He'd be called a king. He would be their ruler from that standpoint. But instead, what is he? He's the governor, because the Persian leaders have said, "Okay, we'll give you some authority to manage this part of the world for us, but you can only go so far. You still have to answer back to us. You still have to get your permission of everything you're going to do from us." His authority is limited by this foreign power, this other nation that has conquered them and even carried them away into captivity, and now is slowly letting them come back. Although it wasn't the Persians that took them into captivity, but the Persians have taken over now from those who did take them into captivity. And so as a ruler, he's looking at it going, "Well, I don't really have that I don't have that much power. I don't have the kind of kingdom that I would have had otherwise." things aren't as he had thought they would be, or maybe had hoped they would be, or looking back on the lineage, thinking, wow, what could have been. Do we ever do that? Do we ever think about what could have been? Oh, I wish things had gone this way, or I wish things had gone that way. I can imagine Zerubbabel might be guilty of that a little bit, thinking, wow, God's blessing us, he's restoring us, but we're still not back where I don't have the power that David had, or the power that Solomon had, or even the power that some of the other kings had that weren't that great, that, the Ahabs and some of the bad kings. I don't even have the power they have. I'm just a governor. I'm just one that's been given some authority from a nation that's foreign to us. And so I'm sure that Zerubbabel was discouraged a little bit and thinking, my role is not that big. My role is not that important. And God says, listen, I'm doing something mighty. I'm going to destroy the kingdoms around. I'm gonna shake up everything. And what you think is powerful right now is nothing for me. When you see these strong chariots and these nations with all their might and all their military strength, he says, I'm gonna overthrow every single one of them. And the riders will come down even by the sword of his brother. He said, I can turn them against themselves if I choose to. He said, I'm going to shake things up. Aren't you glad we serve a God that can shake things up? Sometimes that's what I need in my life. I need God just to shake things up and change things. I need God to change something. Say, God, I don't know what needs to change, but something needs to change. He's saying, I'm a God that can do that. He said, I'll overthrow the thrones of the kingdoms. Zerubbabel, you may be looking at this thinking you have an insignificant role, but I want to tell you, I'm doing something, and you're a part of it. That's what he says in the next verse. Not only is he here explaining to Zerubbabel, I have the power, and I'm going to overthrow all this the structure and this government and rule and power you see around you. I'm gonna disrupt all of that. In verse 23, he says, and in that day, he says, when I do, as a part of doing that, saith the Lord of hosts. Remember, notice how he refers to himself there, the Lord of hosts, the God that has armies greater than all the armies around him. Zerubbabel may have been looking at it going, I wonder if we could ever, declare independence from Persia. I wonder if we could ever, become our own nation again. He's looking at it going, no, probably not. They're a pretty powerful empire. They have mighty armies, and we could never do that. And here God's saying, I can do that. I can do whatever I want to. I can destroy nations. I can turn them against themselves. I can, just disrupt anything I want to here. And he says, and when I do, I'm the Lord of hosts. I'm the one that has an army larger than anybody else. I want that to be an encouragement to you today. If you're facing a battle, you're facing an obstacle, you're facing something that seems insurmountable, God says, I'm the Lord of hosts. I have all the resources at my disposal to handle whatever it is you're facing today. I don't for sure have the ability to overcome everything, anything, but I serve a God that does. The God that is the Lord of hosts, has everything he needs at his disposal. He says, in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, will I take thee, O Zerubbabel. Notice he personalizes it. He says, when I do this amazing thing, when I start to shake everything up and change the whole world and the power structures that are there, when I change all of that, I'm going to make you be a part of that. I'm going to have a role for that in you. I'm going to let you be kind of a piece in this whole puzzle. Aren't you glad that God allows us to be a piece in the puzzle of what he's doing? God wants to use you in some way to do something. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what his plans are. He doesn't tell me what he's doing for you all the time, but I know he's doing something. I know you have a role in that because I see it over and over throughout Scripture. God coming to people and saying, look, this is what I'm doing, and this is the role I want you to play. The key for us is to be open and willing to say, okay, God, what is it you have for me to do? What's the role you have for me? If I'm Zerubbabel and I'm saying, oh, I didn't get to be king, so I'm just not going to play, then I may not be able to be in that position of blessing. But if I'm Zerubbabel and I'm doing whatever it is God gave me, I'm governor. Okay, it's not king, but it's what God's given me to do. I'm going to do it with all of my heart. I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to do it in the way that's pleasing to God. Then God says, you know what? I can take that and I can do something really mighty. And when I do something really mighty, Zerubbabel, I'm going to make you be a part of it. Notice he says, O Zerubbabel, my servant. He talks about his willingness to obey, his willingness to submit to God. The son of Shealtiel, he clarifies exactly who Zerubbabel is. And he says, saith the Lord, and I will make thee as a signet, for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord of hosts. Again, that phrase, Lord of hosts. He said, I've chosen you, and you're going to be a signet. Now, a signet was something of importance from a ruler that designated their power, their intent. Sometimes, a lot of times, it was referred to as a signet ring, something they would wear that they would stamp documents with. And if it had that signet from that ruler, It had their approval and their blessing and their power, their conveyance of this message is from me. I sanction this. And God's saying, that's the role I'm going to have for you play, Zerubbabel. You're going to be a key. You're going to be, people are going to be able to look back at you and know that this is a message from me because I've included you in it. Isn't that amazing? The guy would choose to use us in so many different ways. And notice he says, son of Shealtiel. Now, when God is speaking here to him, there's a lot of, I guess, people look at what time period is God looking at here when he talks about shaking the earth and the nations and creating all this disruption. And I think it's a continuation of things. I think what he's really referring to here is the Messiah, the coming of the Messiah, when Jesus would come and basically change the entire world. And, from the point that Jesus came, the power of the gospel went throughout the entire world. By the time Jesus came, the world powers had already shifted. Persia wasn't the dominant power anymore. The Roman Empire was. God had already started shaking things up and removing power where he wanted removed and allowing others to do things. And he had allowed things to shape. He was already changing the shape of the world around us, around the people then. But there was coming of the Messiah that was going to change everything. And even that mighty Roman Empire that God had allowed to come to power at the time that he was here, it would be impacted and shaped by the gospel of Christ. As you said, wouldn't it be great? All the one in government. Yeah, if we had just had leaders in government that were willing to say, you know what, I'm a servant of God. It would change our nation for sure. It would change the world. And that's what we should pray for, is rulers that could say they're a servant of God. They're not there for their own will. And they're not even there necessarily for me. They're there to serve God and to please him. But he comes to Zerubbabel, he says, I'm going to make you a signet. So that people know when they see you and your name and your aspect in this, they know this is from me. Now, what do we know about that? We know that when Jesus came, when he was born, when the time of the Messiah was here, and Jesus came to this earth, that he came through the line of Zerubbabel. Now, the Zerubbabel is mentioned as Zerubbabel. I'm trying to think of the exact way it's put in the New Testament, because it's written in the Greek language. It gets transliterated a little different. So you see the word spelled a little different, Zerobabel, something of that nature. But we see that name, which is Zerubbabel, in both Matthew and Luke, in terms of the genealogies that are provided. The one in Matthew is talking about a different person. It's not the same Zerubbabel that's here. The one in Luke is talking about this Zerubbabel. In fact, we know because it goes on the lineage. The next person in the lineage is Shealtiel. And so we know for a fact, and that's one reason I think that the guy was so specific here to Haggai when he called it Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel. He was setting that up to say, you know what, I'm gonna bring your name back up again later. And when people see your name, they're gonna know that this is my stamp, my proof that I'm the one doing this. Aren't you glad we serve a God that's so amazing that here, hundreds of years before Christ would come, he would speak to a man who's in a limited role of power, who rightly could have been the king, but now he's just a governor, and he says, I'm going to bless what you're doing here. What you're doing is what I need you to do right now. It may not be what you wanted or as big as you wish, but it's what I need you to do. And to show that, I'm going to one day point back to you as a proof of my work in that day. And hundreds of years later, Jesus will be born, and he'll be born in the lineage of Zerubbabel, showing that, yes, this is the work that I'm doing. Yes, this is my chosen Messiah. This is my plan. And that's the promise that he made Zerubbabel there was, I will use you as a signet, as a proof, as a seal. And we see he came through with that promise. He delivered on that promise. Let me read that passage if I have it up here. I didn't put it in the slides, but it's Luke 3, verse 27, where it says, it's kind of given this this lineage. It starts with Jesus and it's working its way back. And it says, it talks about Judah. It says, which was the son of Joanna, which was the son of Reza, which was the son of Zerubbabel, which was the son of Shealtiel, which was the son of Neri. And so we see that God kept that promise. He said, I'm going to use you in a mighty way. And he did. He used him to prove who Jesus was, that Jesus was the one that had been promised and spoken of before. Now, as you think about that, to me, that's just amazing that God works that way. But it's not just amazing that that God would work that way. Um, it's amazing to me that He works that way in our lives, in our daily lives. Because Jesus says, I think God should give the world a shakeup. He will, Miss Judy. He will one day again give the world a shakeup. We know for a fact that when He comes again, this world will be shaken. Now, whether or not He shakes things up before that again, I don't know, because I certainly don't know His timing. But yeah, we definitely could use a shakeup today. Wake us up. Psalm 37. I think kind of ties into this idea of letting God do what He's going to do. You know, Zerubbabel was there just doing what God told him to do. It may not have been exactly what he is wishing for, or maybe what he had thought could have been, or all that the things that could have been thinking there. But it was what God asked him to do. And God is saying, because of your faithfulness, because you allowed me to work, I'm going to do something special with you, something mighty with you that you can't even imagine. Results are going to come from God. Psalm 37 says, trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Delight thyself also in the Lord. He shall give thee the desires of thine heart. You know, I kind of think that's kind of the same thing that we're seeing in Haggai there, that God's saying, if you put your trust in me, you do these other things. You know, God had told the people through Haggai in this book, He told them, get to work, build a temple, do the things that I've told you to do, put my priorities first. And then he came back to him and challenged him and said, don't question what we're doing here. Don't compare what I'm doing in this spot to what I've done in the other times. You know, focus on me. Let me be the one to decide what's important. Because I'm going to do something greater here than you can even imagine. And then he comes back to him and reminds him about that idea of purity and impurity, and trying to focus on doing the right thing, and letting, the fact that only God can make something righteous, that all we can do is be obedient and participate in what He's doing. And then he comes back and he says, if you'll do all those things, I'll use you in a special way. I'll give you the results that you need. Now, I think it's interesting that it's not always the results that we want or we ask for. Sometimes it's just the results that we need. It's just the answer that God has, and He says, this is what I want to do. This is what's best in this situation. I'm making you a part of it. And that's what He says here. He says, delight yourself in the Lord, He shall give thee the desires of thy heart. I used to look at that verse and think, wow, that's amazing. That's kind of like, whatever you need, God's going to give it to you. And as I got older, and I think it was actually when I went off to college, when I first started understanding that verse differently. And I began to see that, sometimes when God works in us, it says He'll give you the desires of your heart. Sometimes it is that the things we've come to Him and asked for and say, God, I need you to work in this. I need you to do something here. He gives us that. Sometimes He doesn't just give us what it is that we desire. He gives us the desires. He places desires inside of us, and our desires change. Have you noticed that in your life at times, that the things you want, the things that are important to you, change? If we begin to follow Christ, He'll change those things in us, and He'll give us desires, and then He'll fulfill those desires in us. And that, to me, that's the beautiful part of that. He goes on to say, commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. Notice that's what's true here about Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel wasn't asking God for anything special. He wasn't trying to make things happen or whatever. He just kind of did what God gave him to do. And God says, now I've got something I'm going to give you. I'm going to bring some results. I'm going to let you see something amazing. He says, He shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, thy judgment as the noonday. Any results we see in our lives come from God. Anything that is good, anything that God does with us, it's Him doing. Now, I love what Paul said when he was writing about the kind of a discrepancy people would have between him and Apollos. They were both, ministers, and they were both preaching the gospel. And some people say, well, we were saved of Apollos, and others, well, we were saved of Paul, and kind of creating this little faction between them, going, well, we're Pauline Christians. No, we're Apollos Christians. And Paul says, it doesn't matter if we're saved by preaching from Apollos or from Paul. He says, one watered, the other, one planted the seed, the other watered, but God gave the increase. He says, so it's not the one that planted or the one that watered that matters. It's God that gives us the increase. That's the same thing is true in our life. We need to be obedient when God speaks. We need to focus on His priorities, make His priorities ours. Remember, we said, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Let's make Him our priority. Let's focus on letting Him be the one to create what's going to happen, and not compare and say, okay, God, I want you to do what you're doing over there. Let's do all those things. But at the end of it all, let's sit back and trust, say, okay, God, I know you're going to bring the results out of this. I know you're going to produce what needs to be produced here. We can plant, we can water, we can do all the different things we want, but it's up to God to actually make that happen. And that He shall bring forth our righteousness as a light, our judgment as a noonday. The perfect example. We couldn't get our own salvation on our own. We couldn't bring our own righteousness through anything we could do. And what happened? God stepped in and did it for us in the person of Jesus and His death on the cross and taking our place there. Notice also James chapter 4, verse 10. He says, humble yourselves, therefore, in the sight of the Lord, and He shall lift you up. We need to let God work. We need to let Him be the one to give us success where He wants us to have success. I love the context of this passage too, because here James is talking about our nature as people and as humans to war and envy with one another. How we want to compete with one another. We want to outdo somebody else, and we want to impose our will on other people. It says, from whence cometh wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lust that war in your members? He says, we're naturally competitive people that we fight more than we get along. And that's definitely true of our world today, isn't it? He says, ye lust and have not. Ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because ye ask not. He says, you're struggling for all this stuff, and you're fighting for all this stuff, and you're doing all these things, but you're doing it in your own power and in your own way of fighting with other people. He says, all you really have to do is sit back and ask God to do it. But instead, you're trying to make it happen, and it's just creating conflict, just creating struggle. He says, yes. He says, sometimes you might even ask, but you receive not because you ask amiss. You make assuming upon your lust. He says, sometimes you might even stop and ask God to help you, but all you're asking God is to do the things you want Him to do. We can be guilty of that sometimes, can't we? We want a genie in a bottle. Okay, God, I need you to do this for me right now because this is what I want to happen. He says, sometimes we ask, just simply because we want God to bless us in a way that makes us look good, or in a way that makes us happy, or in a way that accomplishes our goals. He says that's not where we shouldn't be using that to consume things for our desires and our lusts. He says we're to sit back and let Him be the one to bless us in the way that He wants to. A good example of this is I had a job interview this past week, and I debated whether to talk about this or not, but it's a job I would really like to have. And so I've been praying that God will give it to me. And I've had to, each time as I pray that, stop and then say at the same time, say, okay, God, but I also want what you want from me. If there's anything I've learned in life, it's that sometimes we want things so bad that we say, God, this is what I need to be, this is what I want to do. And sometimes He might even give it to us to let us see that that's not what He wanted. And what we really want is what He wants. I may think this is the position I'd like to be in and the job I like to do, but if it's not what God has for me, then I don't want it. And it's hard to pray sometimes to figure out how do I do that? How do I make my petitions and requests known? How do I say, okay, God, this is what I'm asking of you? And at the same time, make sure I'm saying, okay, God, but I am also submitting to your will. I'm also saying that whatever you want for me is what I want. That's what James is saying there in his letter there. He's saying if we humble ourselves in the sight of the Lord, He'll lift us up. We'll say, okay, God, I'm going to do what you put in front of me today. I'm going to pray for the things that you've put on my heart right now, the desires you've given me right now. And I'm going to let you change those and mold those and even deliver on those as you see fit. Let God be the one to bring the results. So many times we struggle and strive for things and we get disappointed because we don't see the results we want. Because we're doing it on our own strength and our own power. As we looked at this book of Haggai, we saw these 4 different steps. Getting the priorities right. The children of Israel, it meant focusing on building that temple. Stop building their own homes and stop building their own lives and actually get the temple back to where it needed to be so they could worship God and interact with Him and have His presence there among them. We need to avoid the unhealthy comparisons. Stop saying, God, you did this with so-and-so. You did this in the past. The old temple looks so much better. And let God work in us the way He wants to work in us. Focus on the basics to realize that God's going to be the one to make things righteous. And we just need to focus on trying to live pure lives. And keeping our lives free from sin and letting God then direct us and guide us. And then lastly, the thing I hope we remember from today, it's like Zerubbabel, God says, you know what? I can do something amazing, but it might not be what you're expecting. Let God give us the result. Let the results happen from Him. Trust God for the results. I wanted to, as we wrap up, that's really the end of this point. In the on-site service today, we're going to do the Lord's Supper. And we would move from this into the Lord's Supper at this point. And I think it's a perfect setting for this because we see in the Lord's Supper how God did something for us that we couldn't do. God did something that we might not have even been able to imagine being able to be done. In him dying on the cross, taking our place, taking the power of sin and death away from us so we can have his righteousness. That's how I live our life every day. I say, God, I know if I just put my focus on you, my priorities on you, everything about you, I make you the priority of my life. I'll let you bless me with the things you have for me today, and I'm going to trust that to happen. That's what I hope your week is like this week. You can trust God in whatever it is you're facing, whatever you're looking at and waiting for. You can say, okay, God, I'm trusting you for this. Whether it looks like what I expected to look like at the end or it looks like it's something entirely different, I'm trusting you to give the results because I know only you can do this. Hope you have a wonderful week. I also wanted to mention we're having Sunday Fun Day tonight. Last week I asked for some selfies. If you have some selfies, if you will, send them to me. You can send them through Facebook. You can send them via text message, whatever is the easiest way. But send me a couple of selfies, if you will. I'm going to use those as part of our Sunday Fun Day time tonight. And I won't give any more information than that, but kind of a selfie theme for what we're doing on Sunday Fun Day, 6 o'clock tonight here on YouTube and Facebook. So if you have time to do that, I'd appreciate you sending me some selfies. Hope you have a wonderful week. Hope it's a week focused on letting God produce results in you. And if I can do anything for you, please don't hesitate to ask. Reach out to me. Just let me know. And I love you all, and have a great week. If you're watching this video and you don't know who New Hebrew Missionary Baptist Church is, let me tell you a little bit about us. We're a small country church on the east side of West Blockton, Alabama. If you're familiar with the West Blockton area and you know where the baseball fields are, you can turn left right there in the baseball fields are onto Bishop Ridge Road. Go about 5.5 miles. You'll see one of our signs. You can turn left onto Griffintown Road. Go up the hill around the bend. You'll see our sign, the 3 crosses, and our sanctuary there nestled in the woods. We currently have services Sunday morning, 10 a.m. online here on YouTube and Facebook. We have an on-site service there in our sanctuary at 11 a.m. We have an online service at 6 p.m. that we call Sunday Fun Day, time of games and Bible study. We'd love to have you join us for any of those. Find out more information about us at our website. If we can help you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Contact us via email, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever your favorite way to communicate is. We'd love to hear from you.